Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing a few more questions about God, specifically me asking my coworkers, the people I work with, if they believe in God and what they think of Christ. I'm trying to share my own experience so that way you can have, well, either rebuttals to the arguments I make. They're not really arguments. I'd let them go for a while, and then I might have one or two responses, because I have relationships with these people, so it's like a long-term, ongoing thing. But I want to give you an idea for like the initial conversation. First, you have to be bold enough to ask them. Maybe confident in yourself that you already know something, or maybe you just, at least what I try to do is I legitimately want to know their outtake on things. That's the way you should approach it, because they're a unique individual as well. Maybe they know something, or they've asked a question or found something that you have never found before. And this will increase both of your knowledge if you legitimately aim toward a better discussion about the transcendent, things that are above us that we cannot see. So last time we went over the pagan guy. All paths honor the Great Spirit if we are sincere about it, as is based on a perspective, and God already knows me. Those two things. So today we're going to go going over two more. I'm just going to keep it with the two. This is, I guess, apologetics Thursday. So this is from another believer, but she's trying to tell me the pushback that she's got. The biggest one she could come up with was the fear of commitment. What if you're wrong? And that's a legitimate argument. What if you are wrong? What if you put all your hope in like the Mormon faith or the Quran and you go hardcore into it and then you're wrong? Boom. I think South Park had an episode where everyone got to heaven at the end and boom, turns out Mennonites are correct. Like, you all guessed wrong, only they get to heaven. You think it would be as simple as that, but not so much, especially when you read Scripture. You can understand that God holds people accountable based on what they know and the talents that they have. Those are pretty key points there. You can look at the book of nature and you can look at the book of history and figure this out, as far as I can tell. I had a discussion with my friend who's from Africa, and he would say, when I would talk about bringing Christianity to the world, and, you know, how North Korea is a little bit rough over there when you have people literally lying dead on the sidewalk because other people are too weak to bury them. That's a crazy thing to think about. It's like, what do you do with that? And he says to me, I don't believe that, first off. And then he says to me, you can't change a person's culture. And I'm like, well, sure, you can't change a culture. We saw that in, like, Saudi Arabia and when we were over there. You can't just, boom, democracy. You start with the individual. That's where change happens. And that's why I think Christ said, we will be known by our love for one another. As followers of Christ, that should be the biggest indicator that you're following him. You love your fellow man. Not that you're just going to be completely passive and let him do whatever he wants to you, but that you love him for his and your best interests, because you love your neighbor as yourself, always aiming toward the transcendent. So we look at history, we look at the elements of faith that have brought the greatest dignity to mankind, honoring the consciousness within the individual. It's really tough to argue anything besides the Judeo-Christian worldview, specifically Christianity, because the Europe, when it was getting rid of slavery, had no reason to do so besides honoring the dignity of man that they knew they should do. And then same in America. I would say all the founding fathers, but I don't know every single one of them specifically. But the highlights, those ones that were mostly talked about in history, those guys knew that slavery was wrong, even though they participated in it. And where else can you get that besides giving dignity to every person? In China, they don't really have a creation story. They say they do, but it's, as far as I can tell, it's been fabricated. And if you don't have a creation story, you don't have an Eden, so you don't have anything to, like, try to recreate in the future, whatever that looks like. I think that's one of the reasons why their family structure is very hard to give exceptional meaning to. They have exceptional meaning to the individual, and they let the government kind of control all of them, the state. In India, you have the caste system. And if you help somebody else in the caste system, then you're actually doing them a disfavor because you are affecting their karmic cycle. When they come back, they wouldn't have paid back their debts and they'll be in a different class. So that's your fault. Don't help them. And that's the logical outworking of the eternal reincarnation. Then the other option is, there's no point at either end of the spectrum. Before you were here, you were nothing. When you leave, you are nothing. I don't think it was a Nietzschean thing, but I think he acknowledged it, where if God does not exist, everything is permissible. And that's true if there's no ultimate transcendent meaning to anything. There's no direction that it's going. I would argue with the books like The Return of the God Hypothesis by, I think, Stephen Meyer, points out that the creation of the universe was so astronomically impossible and intentional that there's no way it couldn't have been on purpose because of how specific it was by maybe a greater mind than us. Obviously a greater mind than us. I can't even Like, if you lose a finger, you can't even make your finger grow. Like, you think we could wrap our heads around the creation of the universe? We can't even, like, be in charge of our own DNA, to be honest. So all that to say, the way you find what is correct and what is true is what gives dignity to man and dignity to the creator. Now, if you don't give dignity to man, or if you have no creator, I suppose you could live like that. I know a lot of people who don't like the concept of being tolerated. If I bring my friend out to dinner, then I'm talking to his girlfriend, and she's like, how was he at dinner? And I'm like, I could tolerate him. You know, there's a negative connotation around the word tolerance. But people do want to be respected, even if you disagree with them. They want that kind of respect and that kind of dignity. And usually, especially if you can hear this video, you understand the concept of reciprocal dignity. That's a conversation. That's being quiet when someone else is talking. Now, obviously, I don't have that issue here, besides maybe my cat, who's up and down every 5 seconds. But it's one of the worst feelings ever not to be valued, not to have worth. Self-worth, sure, but worth in someone else's eyes as well. That's community and that's family. If you don't have that, your odds of being like in a depressional state are really high. So that's kind of how I first started to answer that. Like, she could take a little bit more of a conversation because she was already following Christ and going to church and that kind of thing. Second answer to the question, what do you think about God? What do you think about Christ? And this is a friend's son. He says, how can I believe in something I can't see? The Bible is too confusing. And you know, the more I study scripture, the more layers I see of depth. I don't see confusion in there. Perhaps the book is intimidating for sure because of its size, but all you have to do, at least this is my suggestion when people ask, and I've had people ask me what to read, we've had great conversations before, start in the book of John, where God is describing himself, well, Christ is describing himself per se. Then read all the Gospels, Matthew, maybe Luke, and Mark is good too for generalization. I think it deals more with the glory aspect of Christ himself. But it's not that confusing. It has reference points everywhere. People who have read it, understand it, want to share their knowledge. Like, I'm doing this legitimately to make whoever is listening better. That's the idea. There may be other things that come with it, like, I don't know, ad revenue, etc. once things get going. But if you want to make money on YouTube, you tell people how to make money on YouTube. That seems to be like the highest rate of pay. But if you're going to try to tell somebody how to live a good core spiritual moral life, well, that's not materially valued nearly as much. That might come. I'd be cool if it did. Believe me, my wife certainly would appreciate another means of income. But honestly, I just want to kind of get my thoughts out there. And something like the Bible and learning scripture, I think it's core to the heart of understanding Western civilization. Even if you don't ascribe to it, you should read it anyway. Just do the New Testament first. After that, try the Old Testament. Genesis and Exodus are pretty good. Leviticus and Numbers are kind of tough. Leviticus especially, so is Lamentations. But there's wisdom in there. It's a book that's been the most printed book ever in history for a reason. And if you have not read it, I recommend trying to read it at least once in your life. Because why not? There's a lot of very intelligent, scholarly people that have read the Bible multiple times, lived it out in their life, and have not become atheists. Usually, people who have not read the Bible remain atheistic, and then when they read it with skepticism instead of taking it seriously. This is the usual case. Obviously, people like Bart Ehrman and Sam Harris, you can always go down that route if you wish. But the best thing you could do is just give it a shot. Like, why not? I answered the second part, the Bible's too confusing, only if you avoid it. And only if you aren't brave enough to, I guess, tackle a monster like that. Because it is 66 books by 40 authors, if you want to get technical. So it's like a library. The first part of the question was, how can I believe in something I can't see? Well, that one's actually really easy to answer. Can you see love? Can you see sadness? Can you see emotion? And what is seeing? Where is seeing? Well, seeing is understanding. We get that with light. You can't understand God. You can't see his face. You can't understand the whole concept. Nobody can. That's bigger than anything we can ever conceive. But you can have an idea of it and know which direction to go. And that's like always aiming up. And we understand there are things like there's a spirit of work ethic there. That's a spirit for you. There's a spirit of addiction. That'll consume you. There's like a demon of narcissism that inhabits people. And you can push those out of yourself or you can let them in, depending upon how guarded you are and how disciplined you are. And you can believe in those things. If you believe in anger, which usually, especially young men do, then you should know how to control it, especially if you believe in its power and you know its power. But anger is an interesting one, because anger appeals to justice. So if you see something is not right, you have to ask yourself the question, is it not right to me, or is it not right to like everything to the transcendent mark. So everybody believes in things they cannot see, who believe in concepts. Even the transgender debate kind of verifies this, because they believe they are something they're not, and you can't see it for sure. If anything, the things you see in biology will tell you the opposite. But that's not the point. The point is cultural constructs, and the point is living out what you are. It's usually taken as separate from biology. And I'm not going to talk about that at the moment. But it's the same kind of concept. People believe in things they cannot see all the time. Do you believe in the sacredness of property? That's not like a thing per se, but what is God? I mean, that's a great question. What is God? Anyway, I think that'll do it for this one. So hopefully I have a schedule that's going to be implemented. Tomorrow should be games. I'm going to put maybe a video game or something like that up here. I don't know. Friday games and Saturday hero concepts. I'm kind of still up in the air about exactly what I'm going to talk about. But I am playing through Final Fantasy VI on my other channel. You can see it at on my main page at the top right. Click on games. Playing through Final Fantasy VI. That's the original with my daughters, and they're loving this game up. It's pretty awesome. So maybe I'll put some clips on about that. I'm not sure. Let me know what you think about the schedule. Let me know what you think about this and any other maybe topics or questions you want to be addressed. My biggest one has always been, what about the people that never heard of Christ? And so that's kind of what led on to this whole story, this whole search for the hero story, the common element that appears in every single story. Because if it's in every single story, God obviously etched that onto us to understand, and how cultures may have kind of shifted away from what is the truer aim. Because something can be more true than something else, that's for sure. Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Take care.